Coming up.
John Setker's still rocking up to building sites, addressing union members. Who's running the CFMEU? Is it him or you?
I'm not going to make it personal.
The man with the toughest job in Australia.
I'm not going to try and gut the union.
Cleaning up the scandal-plagued CFMEU.
I've got nothing to lose by pursuing these corrupt deals vigorously to the end without compromise.
That's next on 60 Minutes.
He's not a household name, but right now, Mark Irving has the toughest job in Australia. The Melbourne barrister is the newly appointed administrator of the CFMEU. His task, which many fear borders on the impossible, is to clean up the corruption-plagued building industry union and rid it of organised crime figures and bikies. Tonight, in his first television interview in the role, Mark Irving tells Nick McKenzie how he plans to restore the focus of the CFMEU to its primary function, looking after the rights of thousands of honest and hard-working union members.
When tens of thousands of CFMEU members took to the streets of Australia's capital cities 2 weeks ago, they were determined to send a message. To one man, the administrator tasked with cleaning up their union. Hi, Mark.
G'day.
Thanks for joining 60 Minutes. Grab a seat. Since Mark Irving KC was placed in charge last month, 11 union bosses from around the country have been sacked, and more than 200 unpaid CFMEU officials punted. But he hasn't given an interview until now, and he's not holding back about the scale of the corruption problem facing the union he now leads. What went bad at the CFMEU, and what's your, at least early impressions about how bad it got?
Their early impressions, and on the information that I have seen, it went very bad. It went worse than what has previously been reported.
How big is the task facing you?
Massive. This is going to be the hardest job of my life, by a long shot.
There are those claiming, despite a weight of evidence, there is no corruption, like disgraced ex-union boss John Setker, who this week held 2 snap rallies on Victorian government projects.
You know what? My job is to protect the union and its members. I'm going to be gone in a few months. They want a scalp. Fucking I'll give you a scalp. I don't give a shit, right?
John Setker's still rocking up to building sites, addressing union members. Who's running the CFMEU? Is it him or you?
It's going to take time before we can properly gain control of all of the CFMEU.
Do you fear John Setker?
I'm not going to make it personal. It's not me and John Setker. I'm here to serve the members. And ultimately, the players who, like Mr Setker, who have been removed from office or have left office, will move on.
There's no one hoping that happens more than crane driver and lifelong union member and activist Robbie Sakala. Do you support the administration?
Yes.
Why?
Because the union was never going to clean up itself. It's just not the way they operate.
The CFMEU's former bosses have long liked to say their union built cities like Melbourne. And if that's true, it's blokes like Robbie who've done the heavy lifting. For decades, he proudly worked on some of the state's biggest job sites, serving as a union delegate along the way. And while he's seen strife in the construction sector before, he too says something really rotten has taken hold in the last couple of years.
Greed, self-interest, people in power. What's the old saying? You want to see the true character of a person? Give them power and see what they become. And I think people are there too long and start believing their own bullshit and become too powerful in their own minds.
The union that you've loved for a long time, been a member of for a long time, do you think it did become corrupt?
Yes.
Robbie knows this because serving union delegates confided in him about bikies and their companies being pushed onto sites by other union officials. Don't know names here, Rob, because I know you're concerned about people's safety, but it is correct that delegates have told you that they've been told to put on bikie-linked companies, told by the union to put them on.
Yes, I've heard that a few times.
You believe it to be true?
Yes, I believe it to be true.
And who pays the price when that happens?
Well, the members pay the price. When someone's getting pushed along, it's an unlevel playing field. How do you compete with that?
But for Robbie, even worse than bikies are the crooked builders, who he claims have been protected by certain CFMEU bosses.
There's good organisers in there who feel, to a point, maybe even feel helpless about doing their jobs because they upset certain builders, and the builder will wing up the hierarchy of the union and say, I'm getting pressured by this shop steward or organiser, and they'll be spoken to. Leave them alone.
Just to be clear, you're saying sometimes the union was siding with building companies above their shoppies and members?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because they've made deals, or sometimes because they've put their friends on or someone in their family on. So, you do me a favour, I'll do you a favour.
There's perhaps no more blatant example of that than the case of George Alex, Underworld figure and Australia's most notorious construction industry boss. Over the last decade, his many companies supplied labour to work sites in Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland, jobs won with the support of CFMEU officials. Last Tuesday, Alex was convicted of using his building industry empire to launder money and steal millions of dollars. George Alex would call himself a businessman, I'm sure. What would you call him?
A cockroach. George Alex is a person who is a narcissist, he's a criminal, he has no ethics, he has no creed, he has no honour. I mean, he's just an evil human being.
Jim Burns is one of Sydney's colourful characters. It's not just because he shows off around town in a very expensive, flashy red car. For years, he's acted as something of a go-between for some of the city's underworld figures, a role that has, on more than one occasion, earned him criminal convictions. But he says he's a relative clean skin compared to his former friend and business associate, George Alex. A man he says built his construction empire with the help of powerful CFMEU officials, even though he was ripping off their members.
George has had very strong contacts with people very high up in the union, very, very high up in the union. And those people have lived very comfortably on the financial support that George has provided them.
What are you saying?
He bribes people. He stands over people. He cheats people. He lies to people. He manipulates people.
Is it a given that crooked building company bosses have bribed crooked CFMEU officials?
That has occurred in some context. There is an unpardonable sin within the union movement and within the CFMEU. If you have accepted bribes, then your employment and your service of this union are going to be over. Ultimately what union organisers do and delegates do is they serve their members. And when you accept bribes and receive secret benefits, you're diverting from that core promise, that core principle. Those people will be held to account and they'll no longer be serving the organisation.
Mark Irving warns he'll come after any building company bosses who try to undermine wages and conditions, and is also urging policing agencies to lift their game. Bikers running amok on building sites, getting jobs as union delegates, underworld figures in alliance with union bosses. Where the hell have policing agencies been?
They've been nowhere near close enough. They've been ineffective in this space, and they need to be better. But amongst other things, it is a core function of a union to make sure its own ranks are free of corruption. And even though they might have been asleep on the job, part of the administration is to go in and to address wrongdoing within its own ranks and then within industry in general.
Urging Irving on is veteran CFMEU member Robbie Sakala. But he says unionists like him still fear raising issues. Tell me, is it safe right now for people to speak up about corruption, their concerns around organised crime, etc. in the union?
Not at the moment. The administrator hasn't shown anything other than get rid of a few heads, how they're going to clean it up. What's the process? If people are feeling intimidated, who do you go to?
You're saying, though, right now people are still too scared?
People don't trust the administration yet. They don't understand it. The government hasn't done the administrator hasn't done enough to prove what their real intentions are.
What do you say to those union members who look at you and say, it's a good talk, but you're not up to it. You don't have the ability to get rid of those rotten elements?
I've worked in industrial relations for all of my life. I've been a union member since 1992. I've been a continuous union member since then. I was a delegate of a union. There are going to be few others in Australia who are as well placed as I am to be able to take on what is going to be a monumental task.
Respectfully, you're a barrister, a senior one, but how the hell is a senior barrister going to tackle organised crime and bikies who've infiltrated the CFMEU?
It's going to be a hard process. It's going to be a long process. I'm going to approach it in a careful and considered way.
Bikies don't care much for careful and considered tactics, though.
Well, the removal of those people from positions within the organisation is a reasonably simple task. The removal of those people from positions within the industry is going to be more difficult. I don't owe any favours to anyone. I've got nothing to lose by pursuing all of these corrupt deals vigorously to the end without compromise.
Hello, I'm Nick McKenzie. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minutes segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.